to kind of discuss this issue, especially after we were able to have PSE&G, and I'll introduce our guest in a moment. Come to a council meeting and really speak to some of the issues, some of the outages of late, and really discuss all that. So really excited again to have a town hall here, one of the mayor town halls, focusing on PSE&G specifically. I wanted to just give it a second. I know we are going live on Facebook and everything else here, Joe. So just giving it a second. If it sounds like a slight stall here, it is. I'm making sure everybody can get on and join and listen to our conversation. So for those of you who are on through Zoom, and those of you who are watching on Facebook, appreciate you joining us, and thanks so much for tuning in. I want to say welcome to Joseph McQueen. He is our guest today. He is the Regional Public Affairs Manager at PSE&G. He is the liaison, one of the individuals who is the point of contact for us here in Montclair. So oftentimes when residents reach out with questions to us, to myself as mayor, I'll reach out to Joe, and he's always right there to try and get an answer, to get us information. And of course, Joe gets very busy when storms are coming through or there's other outages or other issues. Of course, we are reaching out constantly, in addition to his colleagues at PSE&G, of course, who field all the calls that come in around outages or other issues and things of that nature. So, Joe, I know that, first and foremost, welcome and thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Appreciate you having
me. Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I know that, and again, thank you for joining us maybe week and a half ago, whatever it was, at one of our council meetings. Really there for anyone who wanted that deep explanation of exactly what occurred in a couple of our outages. I would, advise everyone, hey, go back, take a look at that, which is, archived on the town website. You can listen to that conversation because, good job. You and your team spent, I don't know what it was. You might remember like 45 minutes really going into detail of exactly what happened in a couple of those outages. So for anyone who wants to know exactly what happened there, I think, that's a good place to start and a good place to jump in. But I did want to just have a follow-up because I know there's a number of other questions that have come in. And certainly since I announced this town hall, I know that others have always reached out with just questions here and there. A bunch of people emailed me as well. So I really want to just have a conversation really as to what processes exist at PSE&G when this happens or that happens. There's some basic questions people have. So really looking forward to just kind of sharing some of that. And with that, I think jump right in. One of the things that hear often, when we talk about power outages, certainly, what are the major reasons or things that trigger a power outage? Is it usually a storm? Is it usually some event like that? Is it usually an old or aging piece of equipment? Storms, I get, we all know when they're coming generally. Older pieces of equipment, does PSE&G have a regular schedule where things are being changed out, or any type of sensors or other things that tell you when an aging piece of equipment might be near its end of life? What are the two main reasons why residents might experience an outage? And then what do you guys do to prepare for both or any of those options?
So again, thanks for having me. And, it may seem mundane and cliche, but quite honestly, our biggest challenge is really trees, tree contact, vegetation, animal contact. Those are really the triggers. And, whether it's something that's wet, where there's, maybe there's a wet branch, or, where it's leaning at one point, it's not affecting service, but then, we get a strong storm that further exacerbates the conditions that's there. Those are things that'll actually start to kick off storms. But we have throughout our system, we have different, we have SCADA equipment, which we have alarms, and we have different systems and breakers in our station, as well as on our poles at different locations that can help identify these outages, and if there's equipment that may be malfunctioning or things like that we can go to. But typically speaking, on a blue sky day, I mean, this is all equipment in the field, so things naturally can fail. So that's always a situation that can occur. But we do look at our assets. We look at the timing, around them, the age of the equipment, how it's performing. We look at our load growth, what the projections are, and we look to see whether what we have in place, will be able to make it through what the projections carry. And we proactively make those changes. Those aren't things that we try to in the utility sense, sweat the asset and get every ounce of energy out of it before it dies. We try to proactively replace equipment before it causes an outage. So whenever there is an outage, it's not for the sense of the utility avoiding or putting off any type of maintenance. These are really just things that aren't identified, that have been vetted, and just really are subject to outside conditions in the field.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned a couple things that just triggered some ideas and follow-ups as we go through it. But one of the things that you noted there, in terms of uh, just the equipment and things of that nature. Where's the technology, right? I think a lot of residents sometimes get frustrated. We get calls all the time. Even a light pole, this light's out, or something else. And I see it. You guys always post it on your website. Hey, if you're out of power, call. And sometimes residents are like, well, don't they know my power's out? Where currently is the technology around that in terms of power going out to my house, your house, or light on a pole, which we get all the time. What's the self-reporting nature, or is it really just, hey, got to call because we don't have that technology yet? And if we don't, is that something PSE&G is looking at?
Right. So I'm glad you asked that. So we have a new program where we're starting to roll out an opportunity where we're installing smart meters. So typically during the storm, and I'll come right back to that, typically during the storm or any type of event, whether it's a street light out, outage at your home or any event, in those cases, we don't have telemetry or any type of equipment on it that would tell us that your home is out or that street light is out. And traditionally in the past, we form or we create work orders from folks calling in, requesting that we go ahead and repair this light at this location, or we get 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5 phone calls on the street, and we realize there may be an outage there. We're able to put some things together, send crews out there, and better identify what the scope of an issue is. But currently, the technology has finally caught up with the demand of society, and there is some newer technology that has some self-reporting in it, with street lights as well as with the homes and with the service. And PSE&G has already started rolling out the installation of some of these smart meters, as well as we're looking shortly to start the installation of some of the nodes and things like that we can put on street lights so that they can self-report when they're out. We can then proactively go out and replace those devices. But that's why, until we get that equipment in place, right, because we have to scale that out, across a period of time, we still rely on customers and everyone just to please. We know it may be burdensome in a way, but we really do need your phone calls into us to really better understand the nature of outages. Like I said before, we have equipment in certain places. However, to really fill out a map and have a full understanding of what's happening, we rely on those phone calls. So we don't want anyone to assume that PSE&G knows we're out of power or anything like that. Just because your neighbor's out of power, then you're fine. No, you need to give us a call. And through there, we know there's concerns about, hey, how am I updated? How can PSE&G better inform me or keep me abreast of outage status and things like that. When reporting the outage, you have the option of always calling our customer service department. We have our outage map on PSEG.com, outage, and you can look and see, how broad the outage is, that your neighbors who's calling in and other folks have self-reported. And ultimately with that, you can even ask for text updates, right, for your phone, so that, you get proactive updates as the information comes into us. What we know, there were some issues just about the system updating and telling folks they're with power and things like that, and that was kind of creating some problems. And we've been working on that technology to iron those things out. But right now, we're still kind of old school in the way where we're building in new equipment that'll allow for self-reporting, right? Where we have apps and Twitter and things like that that'll help kind of drive that. But we're still heavily reliant on folks calling in, and we can still utilize the old traditional methods, that be the call center, which is 24/7.
Well, thank you for that. Now I'll just note too, all those who are on, feel free to put a question in the chat in the questions section here, and we'll try to get to it. But so just remind everyone of that. But you touched on another piece, which we do hear a lot as well, which is the communication during an outage. And appreciate you noting that there's some difficulty with, because we heard that even in some of the last outages of, hey, this thing is letting me know that my power's on. I'm not on. It's telling me 5 minutes ago it'll be restored 10 minutes from now, and now it's telling me 3 days from now. I'm being a little facetious in that example, but you know what I mean? There was just some discrepancies there. from a town side, I think it sometimes is difficult and probably inefficient in terms of residents constantly will call a town thinking we may have an answer. And of course, all we do is call you and try and get an answer and then try and convey it. How much investment does PSE&G put in that communications piece, or are you putting in that communications piece? You noted the text alert system that you're doing. You noted the being able to track, I assume real time, where the outages are and the maps and looking at those things. What's the investment that's there? And I guess part, as you're hearing in my question, is more of a push to say, hey, listen, whatever it is, let's increase it, because I think that is one of the bigger frustration for residents. They're usually trying to reach out to us, who is trying to reach out to you, who's trying to get the message then back to them, versus, just a more robust external communication piece during storm outages that would serve residents well, and of course cut down on frustration always, your way, our way, their way. So what's the investment there like, and how optimistic are you on the time frame of when residents will see really big changes there?
So I would say the most immediate investment that I can think of that's on the horizon now really help here is it's really the smart meter installation. It just kind of the backup and kind of give a quick explanation about some of the mix-ups. Everyone, so if you think about your home, your street where you live in your power is supplied off of that particular circuit. So on that circuit, if there's a tree that's down, if there's some sort of damage that happened on the main line, line, a distribution line that's going through, and we're able to get that tree removed, we're able to get those lines back up and energized. Usually, if you're a customer that's on that circuit and we're able to re-energize that circuit, you will receive at that time an alert that, hey, you should have power, you should be in service. What's unique about Montclair, really, versus some of the other towns that I cover, Montclair has a lot of backyard service, a lot of pole service. So there's a lot of opportunity and chances for individual services to be impacted, or other things in neighborhood adjacent backyards or things like that we can identify that are more house or service specific. So there's two parts of this. You have the distribution line that feeds everyone that's on that street, and then you have the individual line that's coming to your home. And in the event, a tree takes down your personal line, or there's some sort of damage on that, and we energize the main line, then guess what? You're still without power, right? And that situation still needs to be addressed. Hence, kind of circling back, why it's always important that you give us that call back. If you see your customers, or with not your customers, if your neighbors have power, and in that case you don't, or if you receive that text that say, hey, you should be in power, please respond no. We really need that feedback, because then from there we can tell, oh, there's individual service issues that we need to get out there and address. So that really helps to inform us on how we deploy our resources. The second piece, just about, what are we doing kind of move that forward? We're always constantly looking for ways to kind of reduce frustration levels and get more information out to the residents about, what's happening, especially during these types of events, which are stressful events. Nobody likes to be without power, so we get it. These are tense times. But with the smart meter technology, just as I spoke about, that individual service not having power, we can see. So without you calling us at that point, we can tell that meter isn't spinning, you still don't have power, and we can devote those resources as needed. And that's why as much as, I'd like to, the guys in the field do a great job, but we really, and I can't stress this enough, we rely on resident impact and feedback to kind of tell us what's happening there locally. And then, that helps us, because we have our folks out in the field, but if you're still without power and we're down the street, we need to know what's happening at your location.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think it's an important theme for everyone to hear. And certainly also, I think in the backdrop of, and I was happy to hear it from you before, with the technology that you guys are implementing and installing to have another indicator to be able to give you that feedback, whether it be smart meters or some of those other pieces, because hopefully in the future, it is a big, data sheet that you're looking at that has all the information in front of you as to, which houses are on and off and everything else. I think people are looking forward to eventually getting there. Now, you touched on something, and I guess this is a two-part question. First part I'll speak to is, we know that a significant part, number of sections of Montclair have a lot of the power lines behind homes as opposed to, on the street. When there's an outage or something that requires work on a line behind a home versus in front of a home, what does that do in terms of the time it takes PSE&G to respond to that or to be able to address that? especially in, I guess, a major storm event. What happens in terms of your ability to address those types of outages, and does it slow anything down? Does it change anything, or not significantly?
Yeah, so there are significant impacts, as a result of the infrastructure set up, and it's not just Montclair. Some of your adjoining towns, East Orange, South Orange, West Orange, they have backyard services, portions of Bloomfield, Glenridge, things like that, and so you all kind of share this challenge in a way. While aesthetically there's a benefit, right, to not have poles and wires, and folks, enjoy that benefit of not having those distribution lines in the front, it does prevent us from being able to use, I would say, one of the greatest inventions in 21st century technology, which is a bucket truck. We would love to use bucket trucks to get up, work on the lines, replace transformers, and reconnect distribution lines. But unfortunately, with this equipment being in backyard, we have to go 19th century. We have to go a little old school. So we have to carry ladders into the back. We have to have people walk and traverse difficult backyard setups. Whether it be a pool that may be in a place, some bushes, things like that. So these types of complications, if you will, they impact response time. As far as getting folks back in service, these are things that we have to traverse in the backyards, unfortunately. And it's not, in cases where we do have storms, we know that this is going to be a problem ahead of time, right? Especially if we know that there's an outage in the area. So we do deploy the resources as needed there. And folks that are, in the town, most can probably say they see us, we're there, but it's, they're probably wondering why don't I, why am I not having power? And that's part of the problem. It's just the restoration process itself takes a little bit longer than some of our other towns. And just if I can, again, just to kind of give it a little context, the way we typically try to build out how we want to respond, we want to look at where the most folks are impacted, or where we can get the most bang for the buck. So if there's an area out where we have 1,000 folks out, then we would like to get those 1,000 customers restored as quickly as possible. If we have to, have to weigh that against maybe 5 folks that are out. So, we always look at key facilities, whether it be schools, hospitals, police departments, town hall. We need those key facilities up because they help facilitate kind of what we're doing in the restoration process, as well as, help to keep the municipality running. But the second piece of it is, okay, where can we, from a staging standpoint, go to the next, group of pocket of customers to reduce this outage number as quickly as possible. And, the backyard services that they're just they're a challenge, and there's really no easy way to say that, to say that, well, we could, is there an easier way to get into your backyard? You have to think about it. We're carrying equipment. These are folks who are familiar with the setups in your backyard. So, we don't know about the new improvements that may have been done back there. So these are things that we're learning on the job at night, possibly in the storm when it's wet. So these things just kind of compound. But for the most part, those are really the challenges that we have, when trying to respond to outages in backyard services. Versus, if the poles are in the front of the home, the trucks just pull up, they do the work in the front, they're gone. And we can see right there, what's happening. We don't know if lines are down in your backyard. We literally have to send out engineering techs to walk in backyards and follow lines. That's the way we trace, where the line or where a tree may have gone down. And hopefully maybe a customer or resident has called that in, so we have some informed information. But if it's literally like a tree falling in the middle of the woods. If a tree falls in Montclair and you have an outage, we have to figure out whose tree was it. And we have no technology to identify that tree. And we know, the beautiful town, a lot of trees. So more trees, more problems.
Well, you can't say, there was almost a joke in there, but when it's our power out, not really funny, but I almost heard some tree falling in the woods joke in there, but no, certainly understand that, and I'll add to it. I know often I've seen before, even when we've got storms, when there's snow on the ground, add that. And I know then oftentimes people are worried about what they're walking on in a backyard or whatever else. And that adds another layer, but maybe a follow-up to that. And I know that I've seen it in a couple questions that have come in. So I know that we have Evie who sent something, and I see Melissa sent something very similar, which is about, burying those electrical cables so they aren't as vulnerable to, damage. She notes storm damage and trees, et cetera. And the second question is around the same thing: how vulnerable if the lines are buried? What's the What's the ability for PSE&G to bury all those lines? What's the impact of that? And maybe explain to everybody why we don't see it as often as people would like, or what the answer is.
Right. So that the option to bury lines, typically that's I want to say with new developments, because I want to break it up in two parts so folks kind of have a full context of it. In new developments, per the Board of Public Utilities and in our tariff, any three or more homes, that's built in a new development or anything like that, from that case, then can have a buried underground development service. So that's a case where we have a riser pole, and we have the cable run down underground, and we feed all these little small transformers in all these developments. So if you see maybe newer developments, you don't see these poles that you may see in some of your older traditional cities. And the reason why we're able to do that is that the developer at that time, they take a number of steps with installing conduit, doing other prerequisite work to accommodate and reduce costs. Well, they bear the cost, quite frankly, to install that cable, and so we can ensure that these facilities are buried and it has a more, I want to say, 21st century look, if you will. The issue now with existing infrastructure that's in place is that extremely expensive. You have to think these facilities are currently or actively in service, and for us to bury those facilities, we're a public utility, and we're a rate base, and someone the cost that we found to do that, it's not prudent. For the ratepayer, for the utility, I think, we can definitely present a number if the town would like, for what that cost would be. But the fact is that we would never, we would be in a tough position to ever have that approved, just given, how astronomical it is, and the I want to say the challenges that we would have coming to that. Do you think to excavate along the back of several backyards or what have you, and install facilities based on challenging, infrastructure? It's easier to put poles in front. That's just a pole installation. You hang. You don't have to deal with the underground facilities of sewer laterals, other electric equipment, whatever's in the ground. Everything's in the ground. So it's just it's not a prudent expense for ratepayer money. As far as the outage aspect of it, if you have an underground failure, that's just as difficult to locate as you would a backyard failure. Because if you have cable that burns up in the conduit underground, how do you identify it? But usually you have to figure out, if there's a catastrophic failure where something burns in there. And, if we're lucky enough to know where that's at, that helps reduce the time. But if there's nothing that's that imminent, we're almost in the same situation where we're going to different handholds, different locations, trying to search for a fault. And, that's not as easy as seeing a broken pole or seeing, some lines down or transformer once everything's underground. So it presents its own set of challenges, the logistics aspect, as well as another aspect when it comes to restoration. But then there's the other aspect when we talk about pricing and prudency, and to do a project on that scale, we're talking billions, and, we're a public utility, and that just wouldn't be a prudent expense.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I've heard in the past, no exact numbers, but I've heard, significant costs with something of that nature. I know there are examples, maybe as you noted, I mean, there's an opportunity to go to ratepayers, or maybe there's opportunities for, public-private partnerships or for residents to kick in. But that's the same thing as the rates going up. I mean, we're paying it anyway, right? So on some level, but yeah, significant cost challenges there for sure. Looking at another question that came in, and maybe you could speak to this one. Jacqueline had noted, asked about PSE&G and the power, where it comes from. Basically, at Montclair, we are very proud, I think rightfully so, of our focus on the environment, making sure that we do all we can there. And her question is really, what percentage of PSE&G's power comes from coal? What percentage from natural gas, wind, air? Any kind of numbers around that would be helpful. Do you happen to have any idea of what the breakdown is of PSE&G's power supply and where it comes from?
Yeah, so generally speaking, for one, I'd like to say our president, CEO Ralph Izzo, is very, very, very aggressive in this area, and he's very he has a strong initiative, if you will, to ensure that we're providing sustainable, renewable, providing sustainable, renewable green energy. And for that part, quite frankly, just like to say, we're actually transitioning to more of a utility rather than a generation utility where we're generating power, gas, well not gas, but generating electricity, whether it be through fossil fuels or nuclear. But with respect directly to the question with the makeup is currently with the makeup. PSE&G, where we're roughly for this year, we projected to be roughly about 60% nuclear. We're roughly about 35% in fossils, about 38% in fossils. That includes your coal, gas, primarily gas, but you have some coal in there. And then the renewable aspect of it is quite negligible. It's really around about roughly about 3-5%. Really less than 5%, roughly around about 3% or so. But what we're looking to do, we're actually selling off those assets. That includes our solar assets, and that really helps to ensure that we can play a key role in producing a majority of New Jersey's carbon-free power and helping PSE&G meet the state carbon emissions goal. So as you know, New Jersey Governor Murphy, he has an aggressive goal set to use 50% clean energy and 100% renewable power by 2050. And by us being able to, get rid of some of our fossil assets, that's actually what we're in the process of doing, where we're divesting ourselves of our fossil generation. The nuclear piece we're keeping, which is zero emissions, so there's no, carbon aspect as it pertains to green, to create any carbon emissions or anything like that in the air. And that's really kind of our makeup. But we're looking for more opportunities, as you guys know, in almost all of our poles, we have solar panels on those poles. We have a solar for all plan, very aggressive, solar portfolio with the company. So that's something where we always look for those opportunities to whether transform a brownfield or something like that into something that can be much more useful. But we're definitely, we're definitely aligned with a sustainable, model moving forward, and that includes, like I said, getting rid of our fossil plants and really just holding on to the nuclear aspect of it, and ensuring that we have 100% renewable power by 2050.
So to that, and I'll use it to make a point and a little bit of a point of pride, and then kind of come back and circle around the question. To all those on, just a reminder that Montclair participates in an energy aggregation program. Yes, we do it for our municipal buildings, schools, et cetera. But we've rolled it out resident-wide. Residents may be aware, and Joe, as you noted, right, you're shifting towards that utility provider. We can't stress this enough when we talk about having a energy aggregation program. Nope, PSE&G still shows up. They're still the ones that do the work and get you the power. But one of the big things that we're really proud about, you noted those numbers that the governor was talking about at 2050. Well, to everybody who's on here, we should all be very, very proud of the fact that right now, Montclair's energy aggregation program, we partnered up with Glen Ridge, Maplewood, South Orange, Verona, and we are currently right now at 40% sustainable energy in that program. So, Joe, when you're talking about 2% from PSE&G, for everyone who's participating in that program, and everybody in Montclair is participating in that program, unless you've opted out. That was part of our work around that program. We were at 40% sustainable energy today. Just as a note, we were part of that program earlier, and over the last year or so, anyone who's in that program on the energy production side saw about a 10% savings on what PSE&G's rates were on the production side. It's projected the rates are a little tighter now to be maybe a 4% savings this time around, but it really wasn't about just the dollars there. And yes, it's a savings to residents, but it's more about that green energy component. And so could not be more proud of that. So again, we're at 40% sustainable energy right now, as opposed to that 2050 number, trying to get there, and the 2% that others are getting. But with that, you said something, and I'm curious how PSE&G gets there. So appreciate the goal to try and shift to renewable, and therefore, getting rid of some of those assets that are, coal, natural gas based primarily. But there's, where is that power made up by, right? So nuclear, you noted is a percent now. You noted the percent that are from fossil fuels, assuming you're selling those assets off, right? As to kind of. Oh, okay, I get that. That reduces your assets that you have, but the power still got to come from somewhere. How do you increase the renewable component? Where does that come from? Or are you building more, acquiring more green while you're selling off the fossil? Like, how does that work?
Right. So as we move to more of a utility, then the generation aspect, to your point, how is the power created, becomes less and less of a business function or model, because at that point we become a purchaser of the power, right? So we're almost asking the same questions you would be asking in that type of scenario. But currently, as I mentioned, we do have peaker fossil gas plants that we have located throughout the state, strategically, mostly our Hope Creek and Salem generation plants. Those are our nuclear plants that we have down south, and those primarily, those cover, as well as 2 Mile Island, those cover, like I said, roughly 60% of the power source here in New Jersey. And along with that, keep in mind that that's no carbon. I get that, there's a lot of debate around nuclear at this point, but it's not a carbon emitting fuel in that sense. I'm sorry, carbon emitting asset or generator in that sense. So it really aids as a bridge to a renewable, where we can get 100% renewable. It aids as a bridge. The utility has always made the point that we didn't want to long-term maintain nuclear. We're not saying that, but we're saying that ultimately we need to get there. And currently, the way the technology is based, there really isn't a path that we could generate what the demand calls for in New Jersey in a renewable fashion. There's just really not a path there currently. But the way we kind of get there is kind of in part, as you kind of laid out, part of it is getting rid of some of those assets and then looking to invest. We're looking right now at a strong investment opportunity in offshore wind and the programs that we're doing that way. We're also rolling out a new program with clean energy storage, electric vehicle charging. So there's a lot of other things that we're doing to help facilitate and support more of a cleaner environment in that utility space. And then, like I said, from the generator kind of aspect of it, we're just moving away from that part and then want to focus more on the customer end and the utility end of it.
I see as it relates, so go to it now. There's another question here asking really about if PSE&G has done any kind of analysis regarding how the public feels about sustainable energy versus power reliability. And I guess in the question implies that there's a difference, that if it's sustainable, there might be a different reliability than if it's a more common use of fossil fuels. So I guess my question is that the case? Is there any difference in terms of the reliability of the energy? When you talk about either being green energy or not green energy, fossil fuels, is there any kind of any work that PSE&G does around that to get a sense of if that difference exists and how people feel about it?
So we performed recently. I would say we just completed our sustainability report. So we do studies and we actually look into kind of what the current trend is as far as utility not culture, but generation opportunities and things of that sort. More specifically, I think to the question around, hey, is there anything that PSE&G can kind of do in that space? I think we're really locked in. I'm just trying to see with the renew. So let me ask this. When we look at investments around energy storage, talking about electric vehicles, part of the challenge is that we need to upgrade the infrastructure so that, let's say, were you to install solar panels at your home, you have an opportunity to export that into a grid, right? Where we're purchasing back, we're able to kind of become a little small generator in a sense. Now, if the capacity lines that we have in your backyards, along the streets, things of that sort, they don't have the available capacity for you to export into them, then that restricts your ability to really, help contribute in the generator sense into the distribution network. So there's upgrades that we are looking at to open and create greater capacity along distribution lines, where folks can now begin to, have more opportunities to install solar, things of that sort. We are supporting and funding programs for, like I said before, energy vehicle, storage, and the reason why the energy storage is a big piece and the electric vehicle is a big piece is that when we talk about reliability with, solar, we talk about, you have a cloudy day at nighttime, things of that sort. If you don't have a really good storage, if you really don't have good storage technology, then if you don't use it, you lose it in a sense. The power has to go somewhere. So really the way we kind of get past that, because, I really don't know a way to engineer the sun at night, the way we kind of get past that is just finding credible technology that may be able to ride a wave and kind of surf through that, so we can get to a place where, if it's another day, we have available capacity or backup capacity storage that can support, and provide more of a reliable service. The way things are now, to go 100% solar or, renewable in a sense, the technology really just isn't there to ensure that you'll have reliability or continuity of service, as it pertains to day and night time, cloudy days, storms, what have you. So that's just, right now, technology isn't there. Those are really the concerns as it pertains to kind of reliability in that space. But we are looking at geothermal. We're looking at a lot of different technologies, fuel cells, things like that, to see if we can, in around the storage space and really around the efficiency space, because the less you use, the more efficient you become, and then the less power you need to supply your homes and communities and things on whole. So it's really a broad approach, which includes efficiency. It includes upgrades to our distribution lines and things of that sort that can accommodate these types of investments. The electric vehicle storage piece to kind of help offload other fossil fuel sectors and then put the burden kind of back on the utility where there's other or more dynamic opportunities to supply and support, those types of fuel systems. So it's really a holistic, comprehensive approach to it. But yeah, there's really not one single area where we can kind of just, go all in on. We really have to take a broad approach to ensure that we were tackling this thing.
You touched on something there, and that's the infrastructure, right? If the lines aren't there, then the power people are generating through the investments in solar, whatever it may be, and trying to distribute back through the system, it's wasted, if you will, and that the lines can't accept it. You can't get that out, so that infrastructure work, I think, there's probably a lot of pieces that fall into a category like that in terms of infrastructure work. We're seeing it, I would imagine, in the conversation. We've seen the president of the United States, and I was talking about, trying to move to electric vehicles, right? And the number of those and the percentage of electric vehicles also by certain target dates. But all of that comes with infrastructure work, right? Where's the electrical grid to be able to charge all these vehicles? Where's the, other pieces that are needed? What is I guess, how much is PSE&G keeping an eye on that? And then what is the mid to long-term infrastructure plan that PSE&G has to be able to support these changes that are being talked about? What does that look like for a community like Montclair? How is that how is that carried out so the infrastructure is in place to be able to account for all of that?
Right. So I'm glad you said, I'm glad you asked that. So, so as I kind of explained earlier, right, we have our department that will look at a profile. We'll look at projections to see exactly what's happening in a particular community, the growth in demand there. And in seeing that, if we see for a community like yours, we see where there's this growth or there's maybe this uptick in, let's say if it's NG vehicle storage, and we see that, wow, the existing station is at full capacity, and we're kind of locked up there, and we need to look for an opportunity to create greater capacity. We begin to kind of put feelers out there to see where we can make these investments, what towns, where strategically we can place, and we start that conversation. More specifically for Montclair, we are looking at just some options to see what upgrades can be done around the Montclair substation that we have there, and maybe if not an expansion there, maybe a relocation of sorts or something, just to see if there's an opportunity to create a more robust, dynamic, and I want to say reliable station that again creates greater capacity, greater reliability, new equipment, all the bells and whistles, and that accommodates some of the newer technology and demands and drives that we see in a load profile. It just Montclair has seen over the past, it's been a number of years at this point, just a significant growth, especially along this business corridor in this section there. A lot of new business coming in, a lot of new investments, and that calls for the proper infrastructure to be in place, right? We need to ensure that there's not excessive strains on the existing equipment, because if so, then we're dealing with reliability issues that we definitely don't want to tee up. So we're definitely looking at opportunities to maybe build another station in that location, or expand that. Those conversations are still ongoing. But along with that, we're also looking at opportunities with that infrastructure to beef up lines. So we talk about just kind of looking at load profiles and and like along your business corridor, like, wow, a lot of growth here. What opportunities that we have here, maybe with a larger station, more robust, dynamic type of station, maybe we can supply it another way. Maybe there's, other lines, additional things that can help facilitate additional growth and things like that, within the town. But we're definitely looking at opportunities to invest directly in Montclair. And we look in the future, hopefully, to partner with, you and your administration and serve the residents here of Montclair.
As it relates there, appreciate that, and that infrastructure work so important as it relates to the conversation we're just having. As a side, are you seeing as PSE&G an uptick? We all, are kind of aware of the weather patterns changing, and certainly some of the more extreme weather that we're seeing. But we, of course, we track it with the amount of times we have to open our cooling stations and things of that nature, especially during summer hours and those peak heat moments. What's PSE&G's capacity to keep up with that massive energy demand that happens during, now some of these, longer, hotter events that we're having, and people, of course, trying to do everything they can to stay cool, firing up air conditioners and doing anything they can. So where is the infrastructure, at least in that sense? That's maybe more a short-term question, to handle that type of load use in a town like Montclair.
So it's interesting you kind of say that. So the infrastructure kind of in that piece to kind of handle just shortly what's happening. Let me see, this is the best way to kind of tackle that one. It's a couple different points I want to touch on there. So I'll start with this. We'll look at, we look at load profiles, as I said before, in a particular area. And, let's say if we're looking at one area and, there's just a ton of, well, not a ton, let's say there's not enough capacity there. Let's say we're just, there's no headroom in that space. And we're like, you know what, we need to find new ways to kind of serve or supply power to that area. We take a look, and we always design for what's the worst case scenario, and that can be, and we look at that from a summer degree day. When we plan our systems and our summer designs, we don't do it for, a 90 degree kind of, or 85 or 70 cool day. We go for max, what was the last 3-year, the highest peak there? What was the largest demand peak that we had? Do we have the equipment in place to supply? Did we have outages on that particular circuit? Okay, where were these outages? Did we replace new equipment at those locations? So we kind of take a look, and we always plan for the worst case scenario. But as you kind of talked about a little earlier about storms and kind of as we're seeing this change here with climate change and storms and weather becoming, I would say, more aggressive, as time kind of goes on. We're having like these 100-year floods, storms, heat waves. We're having them every other year now. And we have to design to that. So definitely with our Energy Strong program, we looked at opportunities. That was to help address, this is around Sandy, so I'm just going to backdate a little bit. That was to help address flooding. So that was to kind of raise, rebuild, build stronger. That's when you got the larger poles, things that weren't so susceptible to strong winds and things like that will topple. So that's kind of what came about that program. As we kind of move to this newer phase with these strong storms, things of that sort, we're looking at more dynamic technology with reporting. So it really ties in earlier with our piece. We have more complicated equipment where we can figure out where the outages are taking place. So we want to be able to source that. We want to be able to see in real time these types of live growths and demands and peaks in certain areas, be able to respond accordingly with the proper type of switching and different mechanisms that they have at headquarters to kind of help manage those types of issues. But all in all, our designs, we looked at all of our stations and things and that we wanted to ensure that they weren't susceptible to flooding, and with those types of things. So we fortified that and created those types of more resilient aspects where I think a lot of residents and the end user may see a lot of benefit in this next wave. It's really with the distribution equipment, stuff that's in the backyards, on the street, kind of replacing that stuff. And we actually, we're currently in the process of replacing. That's something we do annually, but with our Energy Strong 2 profile, that's where we're able to deploy a little bit more technology, more cable replacements, sturdier poles, creating new distribution circuits. So you don't have where you have all that capacity, you don't have enough headroom, and then maybe, someone plugs in a too big of a toaster oven, they didn't tell us, and kills a circuit. In those cases, now we're able to create additional circuits and things like that to create additional availability and then have greater reliability. So, that's kind of, those are the things that we proactively and constantly do. But you will see a stronger wave of this with our Energy Strong 2 push. Like I said, the first Energy Strong 1 piece was to kind of fortify, a lot of our stations, hardware, equipment. The next phase is going to be looking at the distribution aspects and then how we can look for opportunities to fortify that and create more of a dynamic system to reduce outage times and in some cases, hopefully, eliminate it if possible. That's always the goal.
Well, I think we're all on the same page on that one, right? Eliminate, reduce time, communicate, automate, all important stuff. I think that's what you'll hear from everything. And I think, part of that conversation, I appreciate Melissa had asked it and really was focusing on, and just trying to get the heart of it was the comparison of, is sustainable less reliable, right? In some ways. Certainly it sounds like, from at least I heard you, correct if I'm wrong, but your balance of what you've got, you're able to cover whatever the needs are at this time and infrastructure you're constantly working on to make sure we can provide what's needed. Certainly that'll be a big piece.
If I can, Mayor, I'd just like to say we would never sacrifice reliability, and the two go hand in hand, right? You can't do one really without the other. So you want to create a sustainable model that's reliable, right? So if if it's not reliable, you can't deploy it. So in that case, we're always, it's something as simple as adding, solar panels, to a pole to help kind of generate a little bit more power to help kind of, carry some of the load, through, street lights and other things. We always look for ways to kind of add and supplement the entire full picture. And, and I don't believe you necessarily have to, have this trade-off, but I think as technology evolves, we will be able to solve those types of, those types of challenges. But currently, as we figured out the technology, or as technology kind of evolved about solar panels, then you realize like, wow, this would be great during the night. So now we got another problem, right? Technology advances. Now we have energy storage, and we're like, okay, now we may have an opportunity to ride through the night. And now, now we're on to the next kind of phase. So it's this constant, you go in steps, right? And so you take one step and we figure out, and then, we have a gap here and we address that step. And that's kind of where we're walking with it. So I don't want to say that, by any means, or, will we ever sacrifice reliability. That's our number one goal, to make sure the meters are spinning. We don't like it when the meter stops spinning. So, we more than, the residents, we want to make sure that you have power, and we want to get you back in service. And, everything we do is to ensure that, it's a sustainable model that aligns with our values and goals. But more additionally, that it's reliable, and we can ensure that you have a certain confidence level in our service.
Well, certainly important. And you did get into a lot of that when you did come to the council meeting. I know that I've seen a couple of questions, people asking, when that happened. That was the July 13th meeting. So everybody just looking back right on the website, montclairnjusa.org. You want to go and, go to our YouTube channel from there and watch that meeting. Again, July 13th, that's when Joe and his team were on to really go into a lot of the details around where we are and where we are with some of those outages, and of course, how we prepare and move forward from those. Joe, as we kind of wrap up here, we're getting onto our hour, and appreciate your time, and like to keep these. You've done a great job. Really appreciate it. Kind of tackling a lot of issues head on, real clearly. I think, which is a big piece that I'm thankful for, real directly. But I'd ask you, what are some of the things that you are seeing, PSE&G, that residents maybe, I'm asking what I'm seeing, and people are sending in. But what is it that you'd want to convey and say, hey, listen, guys, you're not, you're probably not focused on this. You haven't seen that or thought of this, but here as PSE&G is what we're looking at and what we're focused on, and what you'd like to share.
I appreciate that. One thing I would definitely like, the residents to be aware of, we do take these instances around electric outages and storms and power reliability. We take it serious. It's not, I really want to stress this. This is not something where we just look to kind of fix and, we wipe a brow and said we made it. Those aren't the standards that we have. We have certain reliability standards to ensure that those circuits are performing well, that there's reduced minimal outages. And, we have performance measures that are based on that to ensure that, we're meeting our goals. So, throughout all of this, we understand that things happen, especially in July, we had a tough go for about 2-3 weeks. So, with some outages and some equipment issues, it was just a conundrum of a ton of things. But I can assure you, there's a level of commitment to getting this thing right at the highest levels of the company. This is no jargon or company speak. We want to ensure that these things don't happen, because we understand you make a phone call to your town hall, you call your mayor calls the company, and he gives us a tough time, and we don't want that. We don't like tough times. So we look for these
Joe,
types
I see it. I can see there's almost some personal experience in that story for you, huh? I guess a couple of those late night calls I sent your way. I hear what you're saying. All right, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
But, okay, go on.
But yeah, it's no sleep for the weary, right? So yeah, it's definitely, those are rough times. So in those cases, we want to ensure that for one, we're not caught in those positions, right? Because for one, that's just not an effective way to provide service, to be a competent utility. So just please, we know we have issues. I know that sometimes there's some questions around why isn't the technology caught up with things like that, but we are working on us, getting the right type of plan in place, ensuring that we have the funding to execute. And we look at past year's data. We look at what the outages were on a circuit in Montclair. If we see that, this outage, so we name an area. If we see, hey, this particular circuit, these customers experience, 3, 4, 5, 6 outages. That's part of the planning discussion. I can assure you, at the end of the year, it's what have we done on this? Where's the equipment? What's our confidence? Let's do a circuit patrol. So those are constant. Those are constant lessons, learning type of activities that are happening behind the scenes. And if there's any question about this, I would just say just look at the volume of investment that we've done around gas. What you've seen with the number of our poles, with kind of just making those a little bit more sturdy. That's something where we're kind of tackling in stages. You want to tackle the station, the sources of power. You want to tackle the transmission lines, ensure we can get there. Now we're getting to the streets. Now we're getting to the homes, but we have to ensure, that we build this out right. And, we're currently right now, and this is a great opportunity. We're now at the space where we're dealing with distribution issues. Before we were dealing with station issues primarily, transmission issues primarily. Now we're actually dealing with the distribution, the stuff that touches your home, the stuff that's real and tangible to you. And I can assure you, you will see greater performance. Really, you'll see greater performance over the next couple of years. God willing, I'm here. You'll begin to see these outages drop. You'll begin to see a certain level of reliability begin to come into place, because we are able to make those investments and have lessons learned based on previous incidents. So definitely let us know if there's a tree or something you'd like us to trim. If there's something that's not a way that we can proactively get out there, let us know. We would love to come out there and ensure that the facility, whatever's around the facility is clear and not impacting it, so we can ensure that you have reliable service when it's a little wet outside.
Great. Well, thank you. Listen, Joe, thanks for that. I think it's a great place to end, because you really, I think, in a positive way, talked about what's on the horizon there and some of these things coming online, the lessons you guys are learning and what you're incorporating into practice, really. So that's a good sign and really exciting to hear about. I will, note to everybody, we are still, that city of trees sometimes as Montclair is known. So got to be careful. Don't trim back the trees too much, Joe. That's all I'm saying. Let's not just cut them all down here. But in all seriousness, no, listen, Joe, thanks for coming on. To everybody who listened on Facebook Live, who jumped in on the Zoom, really appreciate all of you, taking the time to be here to listen to the conversation. I think hopefully, very informative. Again, for those of you looking for some of the detail on some of the outages we've had, go back on our YouTube channel to the July 13th council meeting. You'll hear that, Joe and his team there. And again, though, really great questions that were submitted, and really a big thank you, Joseph McQueen, the Regional Public Affairs Manager at PSE&G, taking the time with us tonight to really answer all these questions and to sit and talk with you, all of us, and to hear a little bit about PSE&G and to hear from you. So, Joe, thanks to you. Thanks to everybody. Appreciate it. And see everybody on our next town hall. Thanks so much. Have a good night, Joe.
Thank you all. Have a good night.